How you doing, everybody? Hey, welcome to the show. Thanks again, James. Dude, I love you, man. You're always here. You're always here for me. Love it. And yeah, I am a little bit late, but still, I'm here. And here we go. We got this. We got this. You follow the rules. And for what? Yeah. Oh, hurry up and wrap it up, James. Hurry up and wrap it up. So, issues. One of the things that's been big on the topic lately. This is one of those things that's extremely ironic because the discussion around groomers. Okay. Yeah, I know. I probably stand a little bit more grooming myself, get the beard shaped and, get the hair taken care of. But no, we're talking about the other kind of groomers, the kind of groomers who take kids and make kids do things that kids shouldn't be doing. Now, yes, an awful lot of the right out there has been accusing certain elements of the left of being a little bit overly um, sexualized in the context of our culture and our society and what that represents. Yeah, so you're waiting. Yeah. Sorry, for those of you who aren't aware, we did get a flag on the KRTD Media YouTube, which is why I'm doing this on this YouTube. This will be shifted over to the KRTD later. But I know an awful lot of you still like to do the YouTube interactions. But yeah, social media, we got flagged. Can't do live for a little while. It's all right. We'll get that fixed. Reason why is because we got a big show coming up on New Year's Eve. But back to this issue of what is and is not appropriate around children. Now, one of the reasons, yep. One of the reasons why an awful lot of people are upset with the way the left introduces it is because the left, well, hopefully we get the flag lifted on YouTube. This YouTube is my channel YouTube, not the KRTD Media YouTube that you get in the little branding corner up here. See that? Yeah, that corner. Not that channel. But yeah, Twitch, Rofkin, some of the others, we got options. So we'll see where all that ends up. Some of my usual YouTube won't actually see me on this tonight. But you, James, you found me, man. You did. The issues when it comes to children and society and culture and what it is we expose them to for a number of reasons. Reason why the right gets upset about what the left exposes children to is because they consider it deviant behavior. They consider the idea, yeah, we got flagged. And what's worse is it was from a 2-year-old video. It was from a 2-year-old video that Jimmy did, right? And YouTube flagged it, nixed our ability to do live for a little while. Social media is saying, yeah, independent news media. And well, thank you. Glad you were looking for me. You do look, but yeah. I try not to bounce around too much. I try and be where people can find me because if I not where people can find me, can't get the message out, can I? Okay. But yes, back to the issue. Reason why the right doesn't like what the left introduces people to is because they consider deviant behavior, divergent behavior, behavior that recognizes or acknowledges a relatively small portion of the population, the diversity aspect of our community, what other people think, feel, love. Okay? Problem is they've in general been relatively neglectful of what they consider normal behavior when it comes to grooming. And this is one of those things that continues to be in the news time and time again. Um, we had a pastor up in northern Idaho uh, got arrested for being involved with kids. We had a fundamentalist Latter-day Saints elder that was arrested for upwards of 20 underaged wives. Um, we continue to see issues within the church. Ironically, for some reason, when priests go around molesting little boys, it's different than when little boys end up at a drag show their parents intentionally hauled them to. Um, and let's be real. Introducing children without the ability to grasp the sexualization to a very sexualized atmosphere generally is considered reprehensible across the full spectrum. Okay. Yes, religious people engaging in inappropriate sexualized behavior with minors. But yeah, and this is one of those weird things because we talk about cultural progression, the idea of being able to understand that something that happened in the past and may not necessarily be appropriate behavior to continue to maintain for a number of different reasons. Okay. One of those is sexualization for some reason, back back in the day when everything wasn't bubble wrapped, certain behaviors were considered acceptable because the world wasn't bubble wrapped. And shortened lifespans caused people to mature. It's called trauma, man. It's called trauma. We recognize it. Trauma creates survival patterns. It doesn't create healthy patterns, it creates survival patterns. Okay, when it comes to introducing young women to the idea of being pregnant before their bodies actually developed enough, and that's one of those things, the process allows their bodies to become developed. Unfortunately, what they are developing for is something they can still do before the process is completed. Apparently not. And yeah, we've been bubble wrapping a lot of things, but I mean, yeah, seen that video of how condom works? Where the 3-year-old kid bounces off of a glass plate when, yeah. Anyway, um, somewhat hilarious. Um, these are the things that just because at one time we believed that certain things were allowed because we didn't understand the consequences. Problem is now we do understand the consequences of those actions. And some people refuse to acknowledge what the consequences of those actions were in the past to justify continuing doing it today. Never going to happen, James. But that's sort of beside the point. Yeah. Current generation, Gen A, Gen Z, whatever, the blend transition is over to the next. Um, they're pushing back against this as much as, certain elements within that group, within among their parents, are pushing towards this. There's an awful lot of kids out there that are recognizing, their parents' Munchausen, bat crazy, you know, trash, and going, let's now we're not going to go there. We're not going to play that game. We are not going to become, you know, our parents' second life by proxy. Okay. Munchausen. The idea that a parent will live through their child's experiences in an attempt to make their child live the life they wish they had. It's pretty fucked up. Um, okay, James, it's story time. It's story time. It's back when I was like about 22, 23. I was working as a houseman for a convention center. Now, security at this convention center was usually off duty EMTs or police or things like that. Now, we had an off duty EMT, and this was during the downtime when nothing was really happening. We didn't need to be doing cleanup. We didn't need to be doing police. We didn't, security because it was a low intensity event. So we were sitting in the back room and they were telling stories about times in the ambulance. And one of them had to tell us about that one time that actually made him puke. So they go out on a call. Now, this call happens to be for a dismemberment. And they think, oh, great. Some weirdo got a hold of some kid and we need to go clean up the mess. Well, they got out there and there were no kids around. It was just this old drunk guy sitting there holding his crotch while he was proceeding to bleed profusely from between his hands that were holding everything closed. In the process of trying to understand precisely what happened, the gentleman, explaining his condition and the fact that he was drunk, was unable to even get an escort to come visit him that night. So I figured, what was the point of having the thing if he was never going to be able to use it properly? So he went out, got a pair of rusty garden shears. Uh, rusty garden shears, man. Rusty garden shears. Um, anyway, in the process of trying to understand the nature of the crime scene, one of the EMTs had wandered out the back door. No band-aids, man. No band-aids. And there, on the top of the garbage can, was the man's junk that he had lopped off himself. Um, yes. Yeah. Go mow the lawn with the scissors, man. Go mow the lawn with the scissors. I mean, self-administered emasculation with a pair of rusty garden shears. Yeah. Regardless, regardless, as grotesque as that statement is, I think it's an appropriate punishment for rapists and pedos. Just saying. Just saying. Um, now, of course, that implies a certain degree of statism because we would need the state. No, we wouldn't. Let's be real. Victims, families of victims, um, could be, should be the ones that make that happen. We remember the story of the gentleman, I think was in Dallas, in the airport. Somebody lost his mind on his way to the detention facility. Yeah. Um, the father that administered justice. And yes, that's what it was. He administered justice. Got a relatively light sentence out of the whole deal. Again, this is one of those things. Why do we create a scenario in which a pedoculture, as you so aptly put it here, James? Why is it we allow that to continue to exist, in our world? 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, you know, there are consequences. And we understand what those consequences are these days. We can no longer claim the excuse that, well, it was good enough back then. Well, no, it wasn't good enough back then. We just didn't know better. Um, there's a lot of people out there who actually intentionally go out of their way to create situations where they are unable to reproduce. Whether they have a reason for using their junk or their VJ or whatever else, they intentionally go out with the intent of becoming antinatalists. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what antinatalists, these are the people who don't want to have children. These are the people who do not want to procreate, repopulate the earth, go forth and reproduce for the greater glory of God. There are people who are so dead set against that, who still love sex, who intentionally go out and get things removed irreversibly. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's a choice. Where we end up in the situation now is we have parents that are making choices, life, life changing decisions for children who aren't able to grasp the consequences of the decisions their parents are making for them. Okay. And this is everything from child marriage, child transition, um, theft of reproductive rights. Back in the 1800s, 1700s, the Catholic Church had a habit of taking in what was considered the castrati, Vienna's boys' choir. These individuals, they weren't taking hormone treatments to maintain their youthful vocal cords. They were having their ability to make testosterone removed. Life altering decisions made by people who won't have to live with the consequences of those decisions continues to be an issue around the world time and time again. Yes, castrated. Um, for the entertainment of the wealthy, selling your castrated child to the priests so that they can sing in that lilting tone that only little boys can sing in. Um, the sins of today are ultimately no different than the sins of yesterday. And just because they happened yesterday doesn't mean it's okay for them to occur today. We understand the consequences of those choices today in a way they chose not to in ages past. James. So many different ways we can go with that conversation. So many ways we can go with that conversation. Um, let's talk about what that represents today. Because right now we have people in our community, people in social media. Let's talk about the Andrew Tate incident, the concept of the alpha grift, and what it represents to being a modern man. Not quite right, James. America understands the consequences from actions taken 250 years ago, but never how to prevent those actions from occurring in modern day. In fact, a lot of them, knowing full well what the consequences of specific actions were 250 years ago, feel that just because those actions were allowed 250 years ago, they should be allowed to do them today without the consequences of those same actions from 250 years ago. And that's ultimately the problem. And apparently, he's also responsible for human trafficking. Yeah. Andrew Tate was found in Romania eating Jerry's pizza and arrested for the crime of human trafficking by the Romanian police. Why were the Romanians able to identify him and figure out which country he was in to arrest him? Because he didn't give a fuck about the consequences, is ultimately what it came down to. The very unique pizza parlor from a Romanian pizzeria called Jerry's of all things, because he needed to own the libs. Yes, he's headed off to the hostel. He's going to the hostel in Romania for human trafficking. Yes, all because he had to own the libs, being the alpha grifter that he is. Um, yeah. Well, most of the Eastern Bloc, it is human trafficking. The idea of human trafficking and what it is and where it occurs and under what conditions. Truth is America, the United States military, as a general rule, has been a very strong supporter of human trafficking for a very long time, almost since, well, its inception. Um, let's talk about human trafficking in the United States military. He's somebody's bitch now. He's somebody's bitch now. Uh, Jail's gonna see that alpha done in the omega. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, now, but back to the issue of human trafficking. Okay, the United States military. And one of the concepts that you see an awful lot is the idea of the Cheech and Chong, the camp town. Okay, the towns that grow up around military bases. Now, thing is there are certain behavior patterns that the military likes to see in people that they train to break things. This allows for a degree of sinning that is acceptable for the defenders of the Republic, who are expected to live by a slightly different code than the rest of humanity or the citizens of the community in question. No, Andrew Tate definitely does not strike me as the biggest, baddest in the cell block. He's too much of a pretty boy, which of course means that, yeah, he's going to be on the receiving end more often than not. But the Cheech and Chong, the camp towns, okay, hookers, Civil War, the camp followers. You know, the women who followed the camp because they knew exactly when it was the soldiers were going to get paid the rations, and those soldiers spent it on women. Thing is in a lot of those situations, those women weren't necessarily there by choice. Bribed, cajoled, kidnapped, lied to. Thing is that's something that has continued to exist around the United States military just about everywhere. Everywhere there is a U.S. military base, everywhere there is a U.S. military facility, there are women that are introduced to that community who may or may not want to be there, that find themselves performing services they'd rather not perform under duress. Now, the young soldiers, the young men, even some of the older ones who know better, um, don't necessarily understand that this is the nature of the system that they're helping to perpetuate. They don't know that when they walk into a Korean bar to talk to a Ukrainian girl and they pay for her drinks, that girl is not in South Korea by choice, nor is she working in that bar by choice. She's there because she was lured out of her native country for a contract that was effectively human trafficking and human slavery, and whichever end destination she ends up in for whatever duration the contract amounted to. Yeah. And that's the one who actually think they're giving the girls a choice. As you bring up the issue of raping women from countries where they're stationed at war. Yeah. Stories come out of Japan all the time. Stories come out of um, Afghanistan, Iraq, Germany, Japan, South Korea. Yeah. Sins of being the service members. Vietnam. because they weren't human, right? That's was part of the thing about war. It's one of the greatest sins of war. We have people who still advocate for war. We still have people who advocate for sending service members over to break things. Yeah. No, they're not. Tourism. You know, I remember that day that Max came out of that room with tears in his eyes, looked at me and said, "It's a boy." That was the last time we visited Thailand. No, I do not want to take a trip to Cambodia with you. No. Sex survival, the survival sex trade for children in communities like Cambodia that attract pedophiles from the United States, from Britain. And we have rules about that here in the United States. They have rules about it in Cambodia. But the problem is in a lot of these other countries, Cambodia, India, where the untouchables, the street children, where these people, where children, unwanted children, exist. And I'm not talking about the street kids and runaways in LA, in Seattle, in Orlando, Florida. Although they do exist, most of them understand the nature of what's going on and they don't find themselves in the trade as babies. They don't find themselves being exploited as children. When Americans do their vice trips, do their sex tourism, many of these countries like Cambodia, as James has mentioned, um, and there are lots who do, um, children are considered disposable. This is one of those things we like to talk an awful lot of shit about the elites here in the United States and how they have access to Epstein's Island and other things like that, where it's not just the sex they get away with. No. Again, this comes back to the nature of our culture and the things of what we allow our children to become involved in, become aware of, become part of. The United States, for some reason, and I don't understand how, especially considering our utter disrespect and disregard for the lives of total strangers, we somehow managed to acquire a certain amount of at least upstanding moral character with regards to the children in our communities, even strange children, orphan children, street children. The majority of Americans, because of the level to which we've elevated our culture, as weak as that is, recognizes in general the humanity of the orphan and the widow and the stranger, which is why we don't see the same levels of abuse as to what happens to an awful lot of these street kids in other countries. That said, the number of predators who live in the United States and Britain and other Western countries who then proceed to go to other nations to commit their sins exist. We continue to hunt them. Yes. The ones who come back from those countries with kids, then they have every intention of abusing. This comes back to what is it we allow our children to become part of? What is it we teach them to be aware of? At what ages do we allow them to understand the nature of predators? At what point do you introduce trauma to the system? And then here we have the alpha grift. All of those individuals out there saying, this is what it's like to be a man, to be an apex predator. And you got men, manly men, like Hunter Biden, fucking pedo. Tate, whatever, yeah. All of these people that somehow express their apex behavior, their alpha behavior by abusing people who can't fight back. Huge need. Of course, a huge need of being able to protect your kids from outside influence is also helping them to identify who and what predators are. Who wants to subject your kids to trauma? Mind you, not the responsible character building trauma, but the trauma of being exploited. I don't know. I don't think I ever grew up, honestly. You know, um, but yeah. Now the alpha grift. Andrew Tate was one of those who was busy promoting the alpha grift. Part of what got him caught was promoting the alpha grift because he needed to own the libs. Okay, this set him up for a situation where he needed to do a live feed calling out Greta Thunberg. Small dick energy at. Oh man, dude, I don't care. That was a good burn. That was a good burn. Um, Human culture is witnessed by children much more intensely, specifically adult human culture. Okay. The reason why is because of how new. They don't have the cushion of the experiences in which to balance the trauma of being introduced to something like that at their age. They simply don't have the breadth of experience to create the cushion, to create the resilience. So when an adult introduces them to something, it comes with a greater degree of intensity. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean the intensity is bad, but if it's not properly moderated by the adult who is handling the introduction, this represents the potential for trauma. Childhood trauma, we all got it. Some of us more so than others. Some of us learned resilience from it. The idea that my parents beat me, I came out okay. We've had that discussion, folks. We've had that discussion. Your parents beat you and you think beating kids is okay. You didn't come out okay. Um, reason why is because it's a complete lack of adult communication. Remember one of the early discussions I've had about human psychology, the idea of the child, the parent, and the adult. The Sears catalog and the fuzzy cable channel. Sears catalog and the fuzzy cable channel was a thing back in the day. Uh, Benny Hill, when you get the late night syndication of the Benny Hill show from Britain showing up after 11 o'clock on, the local independent channel. Um, yeah. But yeah, the things that we need to think of as being important, the things that we need to take care of in order to properly protect our children from a future. The child, it's me, mine. It's about the id. It's about this is an experience I want to have. Go out and have it. Um, the stuff we found in dumpsters as kids, James. The stuff we found in dumpsters as kids. Ah, yeah. Okay. James, we call that trauma, right? We call that trauma. Anything that changes your perspective on things, it's trauma, man. It's trauma. Um, Definitely, it's trauma. Follow the rules, and for what? Yeah. Well, let's get back to this idea. The parent. Let's follow my orders. Do what I say. Do what I want you to do. The idea is the parent that you own the child, that the child is to behave according to your restrictions, your guidance, your rules. Oh, yeah, yeah, James. Um, yeah, got it. Truth is the one thing that we never really understood growing up in that transition between being a child and being a parent is this idea of being an adult interacting with adults. The idea that consent matters, that you simply can't beat people into submission. I don't blame you, man. Said, I got kids. I don't own them. I don't think I could ever successfully own anything I created. Um, Too much of me in them. I'm the one who broke my mother of that concept that her rules or yeah, no. Um, First child, I broke my mother of my house, my rules. She gave up on that shit. Yeah, she did. She gave up on that hard. The idea is how do we teach children to be good adults if as parents we don't teach them cooperation, collaboration, and consent. All we do is create rules, create requirements, create laws about how children can and cannot behave, about what is and is not appropriate. We don't have those conversations with our children in America about consent, cooperation, and collaboration. half my DNA can do an awful lot of damage, man. Half my DNA can do an awful lot of damage. Won't lie. Um, yeah, it's one of those things. When it comes to raising the next generation, you can't do it by demanding, by creating situations without choice, by creating situations without reasonable consequences for actions. Okay. Without creating space to learn about the damage bad judgment can lead to. Okay. You don't get to grow up to be old and wise unless at one point you're at least young and stupid. It's the ability to survive bad judgment and learn from it. It makes us older and wiser. How you doing, Smiley? How you doing? Thanks for joining the show, Smiley Don. Um, Thank you. Yeah, you're getting here towards the end of it. Appreciate you stopping in, saying hi. Should at least have some wisdom by middle age, James. Some wisdom. And that is the advantage of being too old to care. Being young and dumb, being middle aged and wise, and being old enough to not care anymore. Rounds for all. Okay. I'm going to cut it short a little bit tonight. Thank you, James, for stopping in, saying hi. Love you. Smiley Don. Appreciate the visit. I'll see you around. Remember, folks, family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Go out and teach your kids without trauma. Love you, man. Stay safe. Chilly. No, well, 30's warm, man. 30's warm. Take care, Smiley. Love you guys. Stay safe.